All right, everyone, we are going to go to the lab here. We're going to start playing around with Defender for Endpoint and some of the things, excuse me, not Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Office 365. Microsoft loves the term Defender for something. There's quite a lot of those. But what we're going to look at here today is we're going to look at the Defender for Office 365. We're going to look at the settings. There's not a whole lot we can do really to test out the settings because, again, it's very difficult to because we have no mail really coming into this organization, so it's not really that big of a deal. But what we're going to do here is we'll set up SPF, we'll try to set up DKIM, and that takes time, so there's really not much. We just kind of wait on that one there, but just to show you the idea behind it, we're going to create the DKIM records and all of that. And then what we'll do here is, again, look through the settings, and then we'll do a sample phishing attack here since we have that ability with our Microsoft 365 E5 license. If you don't have your your Microsoft 365 E5 license, make sure you fall back onto the, we did that at the beginning of this section here, actually in the previous section, excuse me. And we got to make sure here that we are good to go. So with that being said, log into the portal here. And you'll notice that if you didn't make any changes on your OA like we did in that lab there, you'll see that it follows you everywhere you go. So I get my pretty rainbow unicorn thing here that is up in my bar. So we're going to go ahead and go to Show All. Now we are not going to go to the Exchange Admin Center here. We're actually going to go to the Security Center. Now we have not gone here yet. And you would think that security, a lot of the things we talked about, well, those are all pretty much Azure AD security. On this one here, we're going to be looking at the other security. Actually, we have looked at this portal already. I apologize. We've looked at it from the Defender for Endpoint. I'm sorry about that. So we did look at our Defender for Endpoints. We'll go ahead and clip over this here, all of this. All right, so we do have, there we go, a lot of things loading here as it stands. So here's our security portal. Again, we've already looked over a little bit. We have our device inventory, which, looking at it here, no risk known, it's inactive. Remember, we did shut that machine off. So it has not been able to talk to Defender. But again, not really that big of a deal. We don't really care. We're not going to jump onto that machine anyway. So again, we don't really care. We're going to go ahead and minimize endpoints. We're going to go ahead and minimize assets as well, just to keep this clean, as well as cloud apps. We're going to sit here on email and collaboration. Let's look at all the different things that we could do here. Well, we have to start somewhere, and it probably makes sense to start at the policies first. So if we go here to policies and rules, we will see we have alert policies and then alerts and active advanced alerts. A lot of alerts on here. We're going to come here to threat policies first, though. All right, we have so many different things that we can do on here. Microsoft actually has several different templated policies, which they are actually quite useful. But first thing we're going to do here is we're going to do the configuration analyzer. So it's going to go through our organization. Hey, we have all recommended, all recommendations applied. Great work. Hey, that's cool. We've already done it. I don't remember doing that. I'm pretty sure you didn't do any of that. So where did that all come from? Microsoft by default automatically makes these standard recommendations. They're on here. As we implement more services and such, it will give us different recommendations. So if we come over here to strict recommendations, we have all of these too. So what the heck is going on? So if we look at the history behind it, we have nothing there either. So maybe if we expand this out here, maybe we'll get a little bit more of a picture of this. No data available. What the heck's going on here? Well, let's go back to the threat policies here, and we're going to look at a couple different scenarios. So here are the policies themselves. We'll come over here to rules in just a minute, but here are the policies. There are 5 of them. These safe attachments and safe links are only available in the Microsoft 365 E5 or Defender Plan 2 license. We're honestly going to kind of just start down the list here. I'm going to start off with anti-phishing. So we're going to click on it here. And whenever it wants to load up. By the way, the security as well as the compliance center, when we get into it, this is a pretty common scenario. We will see this a lot. There's a lot of web parts running, so there's a lot of things going on. So you'll see we have several things that pop up. We have the Office 365 anti-phish default, which is always on. So if we click on it here, we'll see that it's got some things that are already set up. Now, we did not set these up. As the name implies, these are defaults. And this is what Microsoft recommends that you put on if you have nothing. These are very light. I don't particularly like these. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create our own. And we're going to call this, call it whatever you want. I'm just going to call it PSP. We'll just call this PSP policy. It's good enough. We'll hit next. What users do I want to include? I can do users, groups, domains that this is going to apply to here. We can also exclude as well, but we're not going to. We have one domain on here, and I'm going to do the entirety. I want all of my users, and automatically as I start typing in on here, so every one of my users by default is going to have this policy, because this is going to be a global policy to everybody. If we wanted to roll this out here, we can roll this out to just users or groups of people as it goes, and then we can slowly roll it out. That's fine. That's an option. But since I want to make this global here, I want to put it for everybody across the board. We're going to go click next. All right, so here are some of the settings. Now, as I said, these are, well, they're difficult to comprehend when you think about it, but we have to kind of take it at a top level. So remember, we're just talking about phishing here. So phishing threshold, we have this slider bar. We can go 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, if, based off of this, what it detects on here, what happens? So this is the first is the threshold for detection. What are we doing? And then what we're going to do is with the actions as the next piece. So what we can do is we could set this here. The standard is the default. And you can see here is basically that if it's low, medium, high, or very high confidence, we're going to take actions on it. So we can jump it here to, if we move this, slide this bar over to aggressive they're going to treat high confidence, high degree of confidence is going to be treated as if they were identified with a very high confidence. So it's going to take something that is high confidence and move it up to very high, or essentially known phish. We can take it up here to the third one, which is going to take medium and high confidence up to very high, or we can go all the way to most aggressive. That's pretty much anything that is going to be considered phishing. Remember, every time an email comes in, we're looking at the message header, we're looking at a lot of different things on here. It's going to assign a confidence level to it. In this instance here, it's going to look at it based off of whatever level it is. I really generally start off with 2. That's most part where I do with most of my customers. All right. Next piece here is we have impersonation. So remember, we had Sally, remember her boss that said, hey, I want you to pay these POs or, you know, hey, put these out there. But again, that's not really her boss. Her boss was spoofed. Well, what we can do here is we can have impersonation protection. And there are some really cool things that we can do. So these are going to be people. These are key roles, as they say in here, CEOs, CFOs, senior leaders. We want to protect these users. Now, these are looking for different scenarios here with the mailbox intelligence as well for impersonation protection. So these users here, and if we just click on this just to take you off to the side here, because honestly, I can explain this here, but there's so many different things here. Now, for example, if you receive an email message from the vice president of your company asking you to send her some internal company information, would you do it? Many people would send the reply without thinking. Well, what we do here is we can protect these people. So we're looking at patterns, we're looking at AI. When you add it to the list, messages from those senders are subject to impersonation protection checks. The message is checked for impersonation if the message is sent to a recipient that the policy applies to. So the policy is going to be basically everybody here in this organization. We are protecting it. If the impersonation is detected in the recipient, or excuse me, in the sender's address, the impersonation protection actions for users are applied to the message. What to do with the message, we can do those when we look at the actions. So we want to protect certain people. So in this instance here, we want to protect our administrators. Oops, I didn't mean to actually I meant to click on manage. So we want to protect. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put Matt in there, or we'll do M. Alloway. And we'll come over here to, where's my account? There we go. So I've protected myself. So if I were to send to anybody inside of this policy here, which again, we've made it to the entire domain, so it's everybody, we're going to do protection checks. So if somebody were to spoof me, we're going to have even more protection checks against it. We also have impersonation protection for domains. This could be internal or external. So we want to check this here, and we want to include domains that I own. So I can view my domains, which is just going to take me back to a place that we have already seen, which is just this. This is where we add domains into the Office 365 portal. We want to include those domains. So all of those. Again, same concept applies as the protected users. We're going to apply to the protected domains. Same exact thing. We can do custom domains here as well. So maybe we have a vendor that we work with, and this could be an external one. We can do google.com, technically, if we want to. Add the domain in there. So if somebody sends from google.com, it's going to apply these protections. Why wouldn't we just put this to all of them? Well, the idea behind this is for you put some thought into each one of these. So you really want to look at the impersonation protection. These are vendors or very common scenarios. I don't generally set up custom domains here for a lot of my customers unless they have people that they work with very frequently. But I do put enable domain protects for everything that I own. All right, moving down the list here, trusted senders. So they are not flagged as impersonation. So what we can do here is we can have specific people, essentially whitelist people that are trusted. So again, maybe we have an external entity that does this, or maybe what we're doing here is having a trusted spoof list here too. So we can do an entire domain or sender, depending on the scenario. We want to enable mailbox intelligence. This is that AI I was talking about it here, and by default, this impersonation protection for intelligence. So this is, again, AI. Both of these are AI. But let's just say I was Joe, and I am the CFO, and I'm telling Sally to, pay these invoices. But Sally gets an email from Joe, just J-O, at our domain.com. She doesn't realize it. It's got the same signature, same everything in it. Well, what this does here is it's using AI to look at patterns in their contacts. These are things that we talk to quite a lot, but we're looking at send patterns. We're looking at when they send it. We're looking at the demeanor of the messages, what content is inside the message, what types of patterns are they talking about. We're doing that for all of these. We can enable this for impersonation protection for these people that we say up here, these users to protect. Now again, would it make sense to add everybody in here? No. This is for specific users that are high profile. Remember in my best practices there, I recommended that you you think about who your high profile users are. And then finally, we have spoof intelligence, is that choose how you want to filter domains. We can have tenant allow spoof lists. So I'm just going to open this as a new tab so it doesn't take me out of it. But in this instance here, what we can do is that things are spoofing off of our domain, we can tell. And we can add them and say, okay, we want you to do this. And here's a list of them that are allowed to spoof off of us. Or here's a list of them that are not allowed to spoof off of us. We can have internal as well as external. Again, so an idea is that we have a CRM, a customer relationship manager. We have our salespeople mentoring all the information in it, but it sends the email out. Exchange does not. So what do? Well, it'll send out the email. Here is a way that we can set this up as an external allowed spoof. We can say that that CRM domain and everything that is going inside of it is allowed to spoof. We can also have spoofed activity. We look over 7 days, it'll actually tell you, here's the spoofing activity. Now we have none because, again, we don't have a lot of mail flow in here. Here's a spoof intelligence insight. Again, these are going to be insights for us, is that, hey, here's everything that essentially has spoofed off of us. Okay, well, let's look at it. Oh, maybe we want to allow that one. Maybe we don't want to allow that one. Okay, I didn't even know that one was doing it. So it's all good information for us. We'll go ahead and close this out here. And we are not going to do anything here because, again, it's too difficult to show spoofing in a class. Remember, this is just a beginner boot camp here too, so don't worry too much about that. So we're going to keep actually all these checked. We aren't going to worry about the custom domain, though. We're going to go into next. All right, so we've defined the thresholds and what is what. So if it does detect that it is high or very high, what are we doing with it? So in this instance here, we have lots of options. If a message is detected as an impersonated user, what do we want to do? Redirect the message to other email addresses. We could put it to the junk folder, quarantine it. We can deliver the message, add other addresses. Again, you can read these here, delete it before it's done, or just don't do anything with it. In this instance here, there's a lot. So if it's detected as an impersonated user, what we can do here, and most of the time what I recommend doing, is quarantine. Quarantine is going to show that the user is not going to actually get the message. They're going to get a quarantine message. And then they look at it, And what could happen there is, depending on the scenario, we may allow it. We could also block it outright. Another scenario I have seen as well is redirect it or deliver the message and add other addresses to it too. So again, it really depends on the scenario. And here we're just going to quarantine. The quarantine policy, we're going to get to that here in just a second. But for right now, we're just going to do the default access, full access here. If the message is detected as an impersonated domain, what do we want to do? Again, quarantine. Same thing, default full access. If the mailbox intelligence detects an impersonated user, again, what's the difference between this versus this one? This one is actually detected as an impersonated user. This one is using the mailbox intelligence. So the difference between Joe, J-O-E, versus Joe, J-O, that's a big difference. So if it does detect it on here, again, we want to kind of follow a suit. We're going to quarantine it. And then if it's detected as spoof, so we have two options only here. If it's detected as spoof, we can move it to the junk folder or we can quarantine it. So in this one here, we may want to potentially, because spoof could be internally or externally, I actually like moving it to the junk folder. The junk folder is separate from our standard inbox. And looking at it there, we'll see that why was this delivered to the junk folder? We can put little policy tips on it, which again, we'll show you on here. Is that show first contact safety. These are great ones. User impersonation, domain impersonation. We're going to check all of these. So just to give you an idea what they do, first contact safety tip. Hey, this is the first time, and you'll get this inside of your email. It's that what ends up happening is that when they first receive a message from the sender, or they don't regularly receive message from the sender, they'll get a little policy tip on there is that, hey, this is a message, this is a recipient you normally don't get things from. Be careful when you're doing things with it. It's all automated. That's happening on the Outlook client. Web app as well. Outlook on the web works too. Exact same thing works for impersonation, is that, hey, we found that this is an impersonation. The sender appears to be similar to someone who previously sent you an email, but may not be that person. This one here says the sender might be impersonated domain that's associated with your organization. Again, what is that? What's the purpose of all of these? The purpose of all of these is to get the idea for users to question. That's the big piece. Hey, this is impersonated. Again, since we're quarantined most of these here, but if it's impersonated, okay, well, something's not right. Safety tips. Again, look at this one here. The email address, mary@contoso.com, with a whole bunch of varying capitals and such, included unexpected letters. We don't recommend you interact with this message. That's what the tip would essentially say. So these are all helpful for the users. Via, this one's great, is at Chris@contoso.com via Fabricam.com, which Fabricam is, and Microsoft and Contoso are all very pretty much of the same vein. These are old, very, very old, but they are just the example domains that Microsoft has used for many, many, many years. All right, great. We're going to go ahead next, and then we're going to submit. The command you tried isn't currently allowed. To run this command, you need to run enable organization customization. What the heck is that? I wonder if my organization policy is not set correctly. Okay, well, again, the idea here, since we're not going to be able to test any of this stuff out here, I don't really care. We'll probably have to do some PowerShell to enable the organization customization. I'm not all that worried about it. I just wanted to go over the policies with you. That's the most important thing here anyway. This is not really a production environment, as I said anyway, so not a big deal. But that's the idea behind it here. We're not going to fret over this one here. We're going to move on to the next one anyway, so we'll go ahead and just cancel this out. All right, jump back to the threat policies. Anti-spam. This one's a big one. So this one's got a lot of different things on it, but really it's quite straightforward. Okay, so we have three. We have a inbound spam policy, outbound, and then we have the connection filter. So we're going to start off with inbound. So this is mail coming from the internet, coming in. And we're going to, so this is the way it works out here, is that we have the description, which of course if we want to play around with it, we can. We start off here with the thresholds and detections, just as we did on the last one, and then we'll do actions. So we're going to do thresholds first. So if we scroll all the way up to the top here, we have this bulk email threshold. This one here, actually, I'm pretty aggressive on. I actually like being pretty aggressive with this one here. One of the things that you probably want to start looking at here is around the idea between high confidence versus low confidence, or regular confidence, I guess we'll say. So remember, when a piece of spam comes in, or just an email comes in, it is calculated against across pretty much everything in the organization. It's looking at lots of different scenarios. These are a lot of things that we'll see. I'm not going to go over all of them, of course, but it's going to increase that spam. And as you see on here, we can go down to 1 all the way up to 9. The recommended default for bulk email. Okay, so this is a BCL versus an SCL, bulk confidence level versus a spam confidence level. Bulk is not really bad. It's just unwanted. Most people don't want it. Spam could be potentially malicious. Okay, potentially. So as it's going in here, what do we want to do with it? So bulk email threshold, I actually go down to generally a 2 or 3. So a higher bulk threshold, so if we move this all the way up, more bulk mail will be delivered. If we move it down, less will be delivered. I generally go with a 2 or 3 here. I know it's a bit aggressive, but bulk email is probably one of the most annoying things that we all get, and that is what we typically see as spam. I generally like moving it down. Now, in this instance here, these are all turned off by default, but these are a way of increasing our spam score if it comes in. Hey, if it's got image links to remote websites, yeah, I actually do recommend turning this on. We have the ability, and we're going to just turn on all of these here just to show. These are all good things. Links to .biz or .info websites, that's potentially these are common domains that are associated with, spam or whatever you may see. URL to redirect to another port, numeric IP address in the URL. These are all flags, so they're going to increase the spam. And we're going to turn those on. Great. Specify whether to mark messages that come include these properties as spam. Empty messages, embedded tags. Again, I'm not going to go through all of these on here, but there are different things that we can do. We can have a hard fail for SPF. Remember, Sender Policy Framework, we can do that. We could set that as that, hey, if you have a hard fail, okay, we're going to completely shut that off. All of these have little icons over it. You can get an idea of what they do. You really can. But in this instance here, honestly, the best part about this here is to go through. I like to be a little bit more aggressive with these things. So for instance, like a backscatter. Look at this eye. That's actually kind of funny. It just says backscatter. Well, what is backscatter? Well, if I were to send you 1 million emails, so, I tried every iteration of a name and hundreds of names, and I send 1 million emails to the organization. Every one that gives me a bounce back, I know is not a legitimate recipient. But if I don't get a response for that address, I know that it's a valid recipient. And at that point there, I've just taken, and I know essentially I can potentially build out a lot of your user accounts. So I know what your user accounts are. What's a backscatter? Is this actually stops backscattering from that and that type of scenario where it's actually if many different ones are being sent from one specific IP address, it's going to increase that spam. And then overall, what will end up happening is that all of those messages will be flagged as spam and either moved or whatever it may be. We can do specific languages. This one here, a lot of times maybe Russian or something like that, especially if you don't have any ties to the outside of the U.S., maybe. Depends. Same thing with countries. We can put whatever we want in here and do that as well. Then if we want here, we don't actually have to do anything here. What we can do is configure the test mode options for when a match is made. So we can actually send a BCC or just attach a default header to it where it's just like a text or anything. We're going to put this as none. We don't really care. We're going to go ahead and we'll cancel out of that. Let's jump down here to the actions. We will edit the actions here. All right, so in this instance here, if it's detected as spam, so this is just regular confidence spam, then we have high confidence. So if detected as regular spam, in this instance here, what do we want to do with it? We can prepend the subject line, we can redirect the message, delete it, quarantine it, we can add a header in there if we want, or just move it to the junk folder. This is actually one of the easiest things to do because this is probably, we'll call it a lower confidence spam. But it is essentially still classified as spam, just regular old spam. This may be a legitimate email, and it may not be. So we move it to the junk folder. Junk email folder is easier. It still gets delivered to the mailbox. The user can just go to their junk folder and move it to the regular mailbox. right click on it and say, hey, this is a safe one. We're good. High confidence spam. So these are going to be levels 8 and 9 when it comes to spam levels. The spam confidence level for spam, I think, is still 7. I have to double check on that nowadays, but I think it is still a 7 for an SCL. So a spam confidence level of 7 is going to be spam. 8 is going to be high confidence. 9 is going to be very high confidence, but that one we have the ability to outright just discard if we want, but that's in a completely different area. So high confidence spam, well, what do we want to do with this one here? I like to quarantine. Okay, so in this instance here, as we have spam coming in, just regular spam, maybe we want to allow that, maybe we don't. The users can self-remediate that. Quarantines is that we're going to put it in the quarantine first before the users get it, and that way we can release it if needed, or they can request to release it if needed. We'll get to those in time. That's what these policies are. We'll get to that in time. Phishing, same concept. Do we want phishing? Well, if it's potentially being classified as phishing, same exact instance here. Do we want to move it to the junk folder? Maybe. In this instance here, if we're looking at phishing, we may want to potentially quarantine it. That's an option. So there's a lot of different things that we can do here, but you have to really decide on what makes the most sense. Phishing, I like to err more towards quarantine for both. And in this instance here, as you can see, the default for high confidence phishing here is admin only policy. There is a difference between these two, and I will show you. And then we finally have bulk. Remember, we set that little BCL slider, what it was, that was set to 2. No, granted, we didn't save anything. We put that down to 2. Well, what do we want to do for bulk? I say move it to the junk folder. It's probably junk anyway. We don't want it. All right, retain spam in the quarantine for how many days? So again, if it does get quarantined, how long is it allowed to be? And therefore, after 15 days, it's going to be purged. Safety tips. These are great ones. We're going to skip over these since we can't really do. If we were to choose, in this instance, add X header or prepend the subject line, we can do that. But in this instance here, good. Safety tips. It's a color-coded banner in Outlook that warns recipient about potentially harmful message. So again, another policy tip. We created that as a transport rule, remember? So this is a little bit more dynamic. It's a little bit more professional because it actually is color-coded. It looks really nice. Then we have this guy. This is such a cool system, the Zero Auto Purge. So cool in terms of what it does. It retroactively detects and neutralizes phishing, spam, malware exchanges that have already been delivered to Exchange mailboxes. So again, remember, we're looking at Office 365 as a whole. It can look at the big picture, remember? Okay, so we're looking at many different tenants, and we find that all these Office 365 tenants have been, malware has hit them. Well, we know now, after it's been delivered, Microsoft has that key there where they can actually come in. It's automatic, auto purge, goes into the message, takes it into your mailbox and removes it directly from the mailbox. You don't have to touch it at all. This is a great system here. These app systems, these are great. All right, we're going to go ahead, and that's already turned on by default. Okay, then we're going to have a whitelist, blacklist. So this is where we explicitly put, I don't actually recommend putting too many on here. I actually recommend leaving it to the system to learn to make sure. But again, in those instances there where we have specific vendors or such that we work with all the time, it may make sense to put them as whitelist, allowed senders or domains. Senders would just be a specific email address. Domains would be an entire domain. Not a big fan of entire domains because, again, they could be spoofing off in it and you're completely bypassing your spam filters. You gotta be careful with these here. Block, obviously, it's just going to always mark these as spam. So that one's easy enough to know. And that's it. That's it for the inbound spam policy. Let's jump over to the outbound policy. So this one here is really not as much. There's not much you can do to it. But if we go down to Edit Protection Settings, set an external message limit, internal message limit, or daily message limit. Why the heck do I care about this? Remember, this is outbound policy, so coming from in to out. Restriction placed on users who reach it. What do we want them to do? Why would I want to put a sending limit? We want our users to be able to send mail. Well, remember, this is also protecting against anti-spam here. Remember, spam comes into context in many different ways. Your account could be compromised. You could have a piece of malware or something on your computer, and people are spamming out without you, and you don't even know that they're just sending out hundreds of thousands of emails. Well, we can put a sending limit on these here too. Now this is going to be based off of this policy, of course, to whom this applies. We can create our own if we wanted, but this is going to be to whom this applies to. Now in this instance here, maybe we want to do, I don't know, is it really out of the norm? Maybe 500 to send external messages, and maybe internal, I don't know, maybe 1,000. So this stops me at it here. So we can do it per day. How many in a day? You know, lots of different things. So we can go crazy here with this, of course, but it's something you want to potentially look at. And then once you hit those limits here, what do you want to do? We want to alert only, no action, restrict the user from sending, or block them till the following day. These are a bit aggressive here. I generally, if I do put these on here, I generally would go no action, alert only, just to let them know that, hey, you've hit your sending limit. And if they're like, oh, I've only sent a handful of emails, well, again, start planting that seed that, hey, something's not right. All right, here's another factor. Remember that example that I used where somebody came in and set a forwarder on their message, on their inbox, and we're forwarding out to a third-party location? Well, here's what we can do. We can set forwarding rules here. It's based off of system controls automatic. So it's looking for mass forwarding or specific forwarding. By default, it is going to be set to off. However, system controlled here means that it is off, but we can allow it for specific users if we want. So in this instance here, if we set it to off, I cannot set any mailbox forwarders, client-side mailbox forwarders, on my mailbox. I still can set server-side forwarders if needed. That would be an administrator would go in and set that. But these are users who are unable to set forwarding. This is actually a popular setting, and I actually do recommend that you shut it off or put it on automatic system control. All right, last two pieces here, send notifications. Hey, if a copy of outbound messages that exceed these limits to these users and groups, and if a sender is blocked, send it to these people. So this would be like an internal distribution list for security or for IT admins or something like that. All right, let's look at the connection filter policy. This one is just an IP address list here. If we look at connection filter, always allow from these IP addresses, always block from these IP addresses, and we could turn on a safe list. So essentially what ends up happening here is that if we have services that are relaying off of us, like multifunction printers or Exchange on premise, something like that, we're going to allow messages from those IP addresses. Yeah, we can do that. I don't necessarily doing this too much here or recommend doing this too much. There are certain times where it makes sense where you have to. But like I said, I generally like to set up the policies is they're in motion. It makes a lot more sense. And that's pretty much all there is for that one there. Close it. All right, so that's the anti-spam piece. Really hit at a top level. I'm going to jump into the anti-malware here. The rest of these here are going to be a little bit less. There's only one policy per. Here's the default policy. This is for malware. Protection settings. Protection settings. Common attachments filter. So it's going to look at ones that are specifically known, typically known, like EXEs. You can see these right on here. There's a whole bunch of them. ISOs. You should never be sending these. If somebody comes in with those, you can just shut them off. Now, I just want to let you know, these are email only, but what we can do here is use this anti-malware, which we'll get to the safe attachments piece there, that these will actually come into play around Teams as well, OneDrive and SharePoint. So do we want to quarantine it? Do we want to reject it? You can set it to reject so it automatically sends an NDR. Easy enough. And then do we want to enable ZAP? Absolutely, 100%. If there is a quarantine or if we are quarantined in the message, this is the policy. Again, we'll get to those here in just a minute. Admin notification. And do we want to use a customized text? So what this is going to say is that in the admin notifications, it's going to be from address and from name. So we could change these to something different if we want to apply rules and such. So we're going to go ahead and turn those off. That's that malware. It's just doing its own thing. You know, on the end, it's just kind of working in the background there of what's the malware piece. So let's jump to safe attachments. All right, these are just built-in protections here. This is built-in protection, Microsoft, which apparently is updating. Oh, That does not look like a good error. So why don't we just go through a process of creating a safe attachments policy. We're not going to finish it, but just to show you. Again, domains. We're just going to choose everybody, just for the time being. What do we want to do with safe attachments? Okay, so this is a really cool scenario, and this is something that Microsoft gives us that is super helpful. So as an attachment comes in, it's difficult to scan it in real time because it may be a big attachment, and it generally takes time to actually look at it and analyze it. Well, what do we want to do? Well, by default, it's actually shut off on these policies here, so we have to decide what do we want to do. So we are monitoring, where as it comes in, it's scanning it. Does it make sense? Is it? It's not doing anything. All it's doing is tracking. We can block it. Block current and future messages and attachments with detected malware, so it automatically gets blocked. We can replace it. So if it does have a piece of malware, they'll get a little text document in there that says that this attachment has been discovered to have malware in it, has been removed. Please contact blah, blah, blah. And I believe what we can do is there's different scenarios that we can do on these. But this one here, and it's still in preview, but it is one of the more common scenarios that I'm seeing, is that dynamic delivery. The message comes first, the email comes in, and you'll have a little, essentially kind of like a hyperlink there, that as the attachment is being scanned, after it's completed, it'll reattach it later. So the users will get the message there, and they'll get a little link on it that says attachment is being scanned, please wait. Then once they do it, boom, then they can get it. Quarantine policy, that if we are quarantining things that are malware, whatever it may be, whether we're blocking it or whatever, if we do have this as a quarantine policy, as you can see on here, permission to request quarantine messages will be ignored if they have no malware in them. So users can still release it to themselves and then be able to look at it. We can redirect, if it does have a detected attachment that has malware in it, we can redirect it to a specific address. So we can do some analysis. So this may be our IT security says, hey, this has malware in it. It has been detected to have malware in it. You can analyze it and see if it's right. Okay, apply safe attachment detection response if scanning can't complete. So again, if they cannot finish the scan for whatever reason, and it's not able to, you're going to get a little response in there saying that attachment cannot be found or can't be done because it can't be scanned. The user will get a little, we'll say, alert on it. So that's it for the safe attachments policies. Jumping over here, the last one is around the safe links. I don't know why these built-in policies are not working for me. Let's see if this one is. No, I'm getting some weirdo error on this one, which again, not a problem. We'll just hit create. Test. Safe links are actually really helpful. Again, we will do this. Okay. So, potentially malicious URLs within emails. So I get an email and it has a URL that's taking me to a known location that is malicious. What do we want to do with it? Well, we turn it on. We can apply safe links to email messages sent within the organization. This is so important, real-time scanning. And then we want to wait. That's also another one that we can do. So real-time scanning is against for parking attacks. So again, if I send you an email and I click on it and it's a benign, as the message is being scanned, it's benign. But later on, after about an hour or so, we redirect that URL, that domain, to something else. Then it's going to, you can essentially, you're just parked there and then you're coming in afterwards. The other option that we can do here is do real-time scan links. So as I'm clicking on the email, we're scanning it. These are very important, and I do recommend that these all be turned on. And we don't really care too much about the do not rewrite address. We can do it for safe links only. You'll actually see in the address there, it'll say safelinks.microsoft, blah, 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 blah. I'd say keep that on there just so we know. We can whitelist some URLs so they don't do it. That's easy enough. Safe links can also apply to Teams, as I said. So malicious links or people that are sending back and forth through Teams. Same thing with Microsoft Apps applications. And then click protection is that we always want to track the user clicks to see who clicked on it. And then This is actually a very helpful one, display the organization branding on notification page. That's the branding that we've already set up. So that's the Azure AD stuff. That's already set up. And then we can have custom text here. Is that this one's kind of cool too. We could say that, you know, hey, these are, you clicked on a bad link, or you potentially clicked on a bad link, or something like that. And we can actually translate for automatic localization. Really cool. Helpful if you have a multi-geographic locations or something like that. All right, so overall, these are the settings. Now, actually, there's not a whole lot. The anti-spam one is actually the most, when it comes down to it, it's actually kind of the most configuration side of things, but there's still a lot of other pieces that we can do here. So looking at this overall, those are the policies. Well, there's several other things that we can do here too. Let's jump down here to the quarantine policies. Remember I said I was going to get back to it? Well, we're going to check it out now. So we have two policies here. We have the default full access, and then we have the admin only access. So I can't edit these here, but I'm going to create a policy here just to show you. The big difference between those two policies are what the users can do. So the admin only policy has a limited access. The users will get a quarantine message that says you have an email that has been quarantined. They can look at it. They can preview the message. They can request it. They can delete it or block it. They cannot release the message on their own. Only an administrator can do that. We can set it this way where we have specific access, which is advanced. So we can have an action preference. So do we want them to be able to self-manage? Do we want them to request release? And then same thing, do I want them to delete, preview, or block? I don't see a reason with this here. Limited access isn't that bad. Really, it's not. So if we kind of come over here, do we want a quarantine notification? Well, of course we want a quarantine notification. Users, we can shut it off, of course, if we don't want that. But in an instance where an email is quarantined, do we want them to self-manage or not? That's the big difference between these two policies. Admins only are the ones that can go in and release the mail, whereas in this one here, users can full access, they can remediate their own. In certain circumstances, you may want them to. But for those high confidence phish emails, do we want them to? No. We want them to request release. So at that point there, administrators would get an email saying, hey, so-and-so has requested release. Can we check it out? And that's it. So this is the quarantine notification settings. This, so you know, here is that we can use the company logo. We can click the language. Shown. Again, we can change all of this. Do whatever we want to do. Put a disclaimer. All these names on here. Okay. All right, the last thing we're going to do here is we're going to, we'll set up SPF and then we'll look at an attack simulation training. But just to show you some of these other settings up here like investigation, again, we don't have a lot of details to work with here, so we have no mail flowing in this, but what we can do here is that users can, we can run automated investigations here is that, hey, we have a well-known threat, it's automatically, here's a detection source, it came in from Exchange, here's the investigation, here's the users. These are all things that we just come in here and we check. It's easy enough. Explorer, this is super helpful. And whenever it wants to open up. Okay. So in this instance here, we have all the emails that have come into the organization and have gone into the organization based off of this time frame. Now, I believe we have in the past, let's see if I can go back to this time frame. And come on. July. Refresh. We may have some email. Yeah, there we go. So we have some email in here. So here's just honestly a bunch of junk. Hey, remember we sent these here? So these are all emails that are going inside and outside the organization. I can do different things with these. Okay, so hey, I can actually pull up, if I want to, I can pull up this email. And while that's loading up there, there's other things we can do here. Hey, who's the URL clicks? What did you do? Top URLs, where are things clicking on? Top clicks, top targeted users. Really cool stuff that we can do on here. We can also, this is for all emails, we can also look for malware, phishing attempts, campaigns, we'll get onto those, and content malware. So content malware is really going to be around the idea of different locations other than Exchange. So those are big ones. All right. Do we have it on here? There we go. Okay, so we can look at it here. Here's the timeline of where they sent it. Here's the analysis. So here's the spam confidence level was none. Well, I would expect it to be that because this is intra-org. So this is a user from inside the organization and outside of the organization. We could see what spam confidence level was sent to. We could see the IP addresses. We could see all of these different things. So really cool stuff. We can see the message header, plain text. We could see any attachments. Again, there were none in there. We could see the threat detections, all of those things. Let's see if I can find that Gmail. I think I sent a Gmail one here anyway. Sometimes it's easier to go here. And we could see here's the sender, who is all these people being sent to and from. Well, let's continue down. Do I have... Yeah, here's a Gmail one. This is a test. Click on it here, and we will do an explorer on that email. So this one here came in from Gmail, and you can see that it was actually delivered to the junk mail folder. And we'll see why as soon as this loads up. Let's go to analysis here. So this was detected as a normal piece of spam, so the policy was set to move. Why was it detected as a normal piece of spam? Well, some different scenarios on here. If we look at the... it was detected as a primary threat, which again it's not a priority user, which is fine, but the advanced filter just so happened to determine it. Probably had something to do with the idea that this email said this is a test. This is the first time we've received this message from this person. This is a very empty email. Moved it up, and it probably came out to the point there where it says that, hey, these different things that we looked at here, we determined that it's probably spam. But if we look at it, it's that all the authentication piece works. Okay, well, this is kind of weird here. But again, in this instance here, we can have the user say that this was not spam, and move it to the inbox. So lots of different things that we can do here. So here's everything inside of here. Really cool stuff with the Explorer. The Explorer is actually a very helpful tool. We have this review tab here, which we as administrators would have the action to. We can come in here. We can look at the quarantine. We can look at all the messages in the quarantine, which right now, there shouldn't be any. We can also look at the files that are in quarantine and do different things with those too. And again, if we have a piece of file in here or something like that, we can view it. We can, just like the Explorer there, we can look at some fine details on it. And then if we want to, we can release it to the user. We can also come over here to the Action Center, which there's a unified Action Center now, which would come over here. Which we don't have anything, of course, because we have no actions going on inside of our organization, but that's essentially sent us to the Unified Action Center here. Actions and submissions, and here's Action Center here, so it just takes us up here. But this would also come into play here as Unified, is that we also have the endpoint piece that comes along with this too. We've looked at Explorer, we looked at Review, Campaigns we're going to get to here in just a second. Let's look at Threat Tracker. Again, we don't have any threats in this organization because it's difficult to kind of do that, but what will end up happening here is that we can go through it and look at all of those pieces. In a more advanced class, I would set up some of the configuration and testing and troubleshooting pieces here where we can actually simulate some malware coming in here and everything. But again, I'm just trying to keep this high level so we can just get an idea of it. Message trace, if we want to check literally messages that are inside of the organization. Mail flow to and fro. This is helpful. We can say here, messages sent from my primary domain the last day, or I can just look for a trace. I want to look for all messages that were sent by this person or to this person or whatever. Come out of there. Let's leave Threat Tracker. We'll also close the phishing policies. And the last piece here, like I said, what I want to finish discussing here, we're going to come back to it here in just a second. But we're going to look at campaigns. So campaigns here is that, hey, we have a malware campaign inside of the organization. It has been detected. Where is it going? What's it doing? We'll be able to check it all right from here. Really cool stuff. Okay, let's jump back over here to policies. We go to threat policies. We come down here and we have this DKIM. Now I'm going to open up on another screen here. I'm going to get my GoDaddy set up. I'm going to sign in here so I can get my domain set up while we're working through this here. That one. So DKIM. Remember, okay, nope, that is not that one. Oops, sorry about that. I'm going to sign out of here. All right, so DKIM, remember, is that as emails are coming out of my organization, they are going to be stamped with a key. And you can see here that the PocketSquareProfessor.live, no DKIM keys are saved. We come over here to this mail.onMicrosoft, no DKIM keys are saved. And then this one here, no DKIM keys are saved. We can create DKIM keys here, but again, it's really all about who's sending. Do we ever really send from any of these here? Not really. Now, if you don't have a domain on here, that's perfectly fine as well. What will end up happening here is that you would be able to just watch this one here. So if you did not purchase a domain, again, not a problem. Certainly not a problem at all. But what we'll end up doing here is we're going to show you what the DKIM process is. We're not going to be able to completely finish it because it takes a little bit of time. So I have over here my GoDaddy domain. Remember, we've already looked at some of these things on here. So the first thing that we're going to do is set up a SPF record. Okay, well, how do we set up an SPF record? How do we even know if an SPF record exists? Well, let's go and do some tools here. So mxtoolbox.com. Love this site. It is great. So again, we're going to do an MX lookup. So PocketSquareProfessor.live. Here's the MX toolbox. It's going to look at the tool. And you'll see on here is that, oh great, we have live.protection. And we see down here is that your email service provider is Microsoft Office. We have DMARC, not published. The DNS record is, that's fine. Let's do some other analyzers. Oops, we want to do DNS lookup here. Actually, you know what? We're going to come over here to all tools. It's a little bit easier to kind of flow through here. So SPF, Center Policy Framework, PocketSquareProfessor.live. Hey, I got a SPF record in here. It says we have V equals SPF. Who put that in there? We did in the beginning, actually. So you'll see over here where I have, inside of my domain here, I have this text record that says V equals SPF1, include spf.protection.outlook.com. So this is saying that if it's coming from Outlook, protection.outlook.com, or coming from Office 365, that it is in the approved senders list. Then we have this -all. This is actually important. This little character right here is important. There's several of them that you can get, but there are two main ones. You'll see a tilde, which is, or the little squiggly, which is a squiggly line there, which is a soft fail, and then this is a hard fail. What's the difference between the two? Well, a hard fail is, which I recommend once you are fully set in here, is you would set up a hard fail, that if it literally comes from anything else, that's called an SPF hard fail. We are saying we guarantee, as an organization, it is not coming from anything other than these addresses inside of here, which again, we only have one. So we're guaranteeing it's only coming from these. If it comes from anything else, that's called an SPF hard fail, and that's going to greatly increase the spam confidence level. So that's fine. We also have the little tilde on there, which is if it fails, soft fails, it's still going to show that it failed SPF, and it's going to only raise the confidence level a little bit. So we already have this SPF record set up. Cool. That's great. Let's look over here to all tools. And we can, where the heck is it here? DKIM. I'm going to type in my domain, PocketSquareProfessor.live. An error has occurred with your lookup. Well, here's the thing about these. These are a little bit different. So these require just a tiny bit of difference to them. So we're going to come over here to domain keys, and we're going to pick the domain that we've chosen. Again, if you don't have one, like I said, don't worry about it. Just watch. We're not going to do anything crazy. Trust me. So this is going to load up, and we're going to create DKIM keys. It's going to take a little bit of time. But eventually it's going to give us some records that we need to put. Okay, so we have to publish CNAME records. If we click this little learn more about DKIM, how to use DKIM to validate outbound sent messages. Well, there's several different things that we have to do just to show you here. Contoso.com sends. It's got a DKIM signature. Woodgrove Bank. It's got a signature on it, so we could see it over there. Outlook.com, we have a fail. So it came from it. The DKIM signature failed. WoodgraveBank.com is not sending from Outlook.com because the original was from Contoso. Contoso had a DKIM signature on it. Outlook.com, when it got to it eventually, because we apparently proxied through it or something like that, it's going to fail. So how do we create it? Well, they have simple steps that are on here. We have to create these simple things. These are a little bit annoying here, but I'll just show you how to create them because they're a little wonky to play around with. But they tell you exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to have a host name, which is selector1. We're going to copy that. Come over here. We're going to add a CNAME. It's going to be selector1, domain key. Then we're going to copy this whole section here. Come over here, hit the value. We'll put the DTTL at a half hour. We're going to add the record. Then we have to do selector 2. This is important because we do have to come back in here. We're going to add another one. CNAME. Selector 2. Highlight all of this. Come over here. Value. We'll put the TTL at the default at half hour. We're going to add the record. Okay, so if we look at it here, we have, coming back here, we have a CNAME, which is this one. Selector1 dot underscore domain key dot PocketSquareProfessor.live is essentially what the record is. So how do we check if that has been replicated? We looked at this what's my DNS before. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do CNAME. We're going to do selector1 dot PocketSquareProfessor.live. Now I'm going to go ahead and copy this whole thing so that I don't have to worry about typing that in again. We can hit search, and we can see that we have some information. It's starting to trickle out there, which is good. So we can come over here. So we've copied everything. We're good. At this point here, we have to wait for Office 365 to be able to see that that record has been public. So we can come over here and we can toggle that switch. Now it's out there checking, so it may not be available just yet. Yeah. So it's saying right now the CNAME record does not exist for this config. Please publish the 2 names. If you've already done, it will take a few minutes to as many as 4 days. I've never seen it take 4 days, but generally speaking, it takes a while. Probably about an hour or so, and you can flip that on. But again, since this is only a lab environment, we don't really care. I just want to show you what the process is. We just essentially just wait for this to go about its business across the internet, which will eventually happen. But we're not really all that concerned about it as it stands. We can try this from time to time, but it's no sense in pushing it. We've already seen before many times that it doesn't necessarily work as fast as you want it to. So we'll just hit OK. So at that point there, what will end up happening is that it will be using the selector key 1 for all of ours, stamping that on there as it goes out to the internet. Now, another good idea here is that if for whatever reason our account is compromised, Microsoft actually does recommend 2 things. First, by default, the DKIM keys are set to 128-bit AES. We actually recommend to jump that up to 256. That's the first reference. And then the second recommendation is to change the selector keys. So we rotate So you'll see down here is it says an option to rotate keys. So by default, it's going to use the one. We want to rotate it to the second one every 6 months. Now, I wish they can build into here. Is that just, hey, automatically rotate every 6 months? That'd be great. But it is what it is. It's all manual as it stands. I always just put a calendar invite every 6 months to rotate the domain keys. It's very easy. You come in here, it takes 2 seconds, and then we move on with our lives. All right. The last piece here that we are going to do, so that is DKIM. It's been set up. Very easy. Last piece we want to do is set up DMARC. So this one here is where I use tool. I love this here. So we're going to do DMARC. We want to do a DMARC record generator. Now, actually, I like DMARCian, and I like this DMARC analyzer. I kind of like DMARCian. It's really easy. So when I want to create a DMARC record, so here's the domain, PocketSquareProfessor.live. And it's going to start through the process. It's going to walk us through. This is just a wonderful little thing that'll tell us at the end, hey, we're good. Okay, DMARC allows you to apply different policies to emails that appears on a line with your domain. So this is you're telling other domains what to do with your mail. So do we want to just be able to treat mail that fails the DMARC check? What do we want to do with it? We want you as an organization are going to go out to this record and you're going to say, okay, well, you failed DMARC, you failed several other things. This record here is going to be a public DNS to tell other organizations what to do. Well, we're not going to do anything. We're just going to collect the data. We can quarantine it if we want, or we can reject it outright. They're a bit aggressive. Quarantine's probably the best, but reject it outright. I don't see that too frequently. We don't like rejecting mail too frequently, but we'll just do nothing for now. We're just going to collect the data. And then where do you want these aggregate reports sent? So these reports will be sent to you on a frequent basis. It can't be all the time. And they're actually a giant XML document. So in this one here, we're going to send it to a fake email address that does not actually exist inside of our organization. And we can add multiple if we want. We'll just do the DMARC at PocketSquareProfessor Live. Now, obviously, don't send it to mine, of course, but send it to whatever your domain is. And do you want to receive individual ones? No. We want kind of the aggregated one. Individual ones are far too much effort. Okay, and do we want it to be relaxed or strict? So it's probably best, again, for a lab environment to be relaxed. But in a production environment, if you have your DKIM set up and your SPF set up correctly here, we may want to move this to strict. Again, since we're just going to be doing this for lab, yeah, we'll keep it. You want a different policy for subdomains? You know, example.com or department.example.com? No, we're just going to keep it as normal. And then what a percentage of mail. We can actually apply this to a specific percentage as well, as it'll come out just randomly to check it. I would say 100% here. We're going to create the record. And here is the record. So we're going to come over here. And we're going to see V equals DMARC1. P is none, because we've set that to policy, is none. And then what aggregated reports do we want to send to? DMARC at PocketSquareProfessor.live. That's all we're doing. If we were to do additional things, this record would be longer. So if we come over here, hit add, choose type, name. That is not the correct one. We want the actual target. Is this. So the name is going to be this. The target's going, or the value is going to be this. We're going to add that record. Let's double check. Okay, so it's actually, this is a, we actually just want it to be like this. In GoDaddy, it's automatically adding it. We just want it to be essentially underscore DMARC is what it's going to be there. Okay, so we have DMARC published. We have DKIM published, which maybe we can try and toggle it on now. We'll try it. Probably not, but it's worth a shot. So we have DMARC, we have SPF, we have DKIM configured. Again, DKIM is not fully working because we are not signing those yet. But again, once ever that figures out there, generally in about a day or so, we'd come in here and we'd be able to flip the switch on and we'd be, setting ourselves up well. DMARCian is a great tool here. I recommend it. It's really easy to work with. Alrighty, well we have one last thing that we're going to be doing here in Defender, and that is an attack simulation training. These are so much fun. These are really great. We can do a lot with these. I'm not going to go super in depth here, but I'm going to go a couple different things here. Is that we can just start a simulation. Hey, we're going to do an instant simulation on here. This is really cool. So we're going to go ahead and hit continue. Here's the preview, system message. Hey, this is what it's going to send to people. We're going to edit the users. We're going to send this to Geddy Lee. So we can actually choose several different scenarios on here. But I want one. You know what? I'm going to choose specific users. Geddy Lee. G Lee. There we go. We're going to add that. And then we're also going to do Neil Peart. Add the user. And we're going to launch the simulation. That's it. We'll go a little bit more in detail on it here, but we're going to wait probably about 5 minutes or so. So I'm going to go ahead and pause while this is being, the simulation is being launched. It's going to take a little bit of time here, but those users will be able to get that here very soon. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here for the time being. We'll come right back. Okay, and we are back. It's been about 5 minutes or so. So I am in Geddy Lee's mailbox right now, and I have this email that was sent. Our server detected some errors. If we're looking at this here, let's look at a couple of things. So this is a very weird, what the heck is Effecture LLC? I don't know what that is. I don't know what any of this stuff means. It's not giving us anything on here. These look very strange, right? Well, to you and I, maybe, yes. But to a user, again, remember, we're looking at the most, we'll say really when it comes down to it, some of our users here, they will click on anything. And that's what we want to do here. So again, I'm a user and I'm going to simulate it. All right, well, I got to see. Obviously, I have some errors delivering messages. All right, well, let's go ahead and click on it. What happens? Well, I'm going to be redirected, and it's going to say sign into your account. Okay, G. Lee. So look at this site that we are currently on right now. This looks a lot like the Microsoft 365 portal when we sign in. So it's got Microsoft branding on it, but we come up here and we got this AT template with all of this nonsense. Look at the copyright down here, 2008, terms of use. It actually takes us to Microsoft's terms of use and privacy.microsoft. So here's my account. Okay, well, I'm going to click sign in. Well, here's my password. Oh, no. Okay, so immediately what we're doing in here, these are obviously, we can make this look much nicer, of course, but it says disclaimer, the email you just clicked on is a phishing email simulation. It is not a real email. The owner of the trademark, blah, 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 blah. So it's saying that logo imitation or dated material, branding. So we can look at, see, it's showing you on here. It says Office 365. We respect you privacy. We have some other things. It says copyright 2020, Microsoft Corp. So here you go. Spelling and grammar irregularities. URL hyperlinking hides a true URL. So this is showing you here, mimic a work or business process. These are all of the things that come into here. We've assigned trainings for you how to avoid this in the future. Now I can go directly to it, or you'll see right here, Geddy Lee, you have one training course to complete. Should take 3 minutes. Please complete these by August 29th. So essentially you have, a month to take it. Because you're recently fished, we require you to take trainings, blah, blah, blah. You're going to take the attached ICS. You can actually put it in there. So we have these on here right now. Looks cool. Well, let's go right to the training here. So these are really cool, and these are great ways of instructing your users to safely, yes, you are kind of playing with them a little bit. Sure, we understand. And I have two. I have mass market phishing and web phishing. These are 3 minutes. I'm just going to click on web phishing just to show you what this looks like. But I'm logged in here under my Geddy Lee account. And these are pretty cool. They're very short. They're very easy to digest. We have a little calendar invite on there. So this is popping up here. Web phishing, how savvy are you? And essentially these are training. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this here because I don't really care too much about this. But again, it'll show you different things on here. We have actually, there's like a little bit of an interaction on there. They'll show you different scenarios and different pieces on here. Really cool stuff. So we're going to go ahead and quit on this. Content has ended. So I still have these. I'm in progress to it, or I'll finish it. So with that all being said, we've successfully phished our user. As you see here on mine, so this is on my account here. Hey, this doesn't look right to me. You know, I'm looking at all of these pieces on here. Hey, this doesn't look right. So I have advanced actions. I can do different things here. I can say, you know, hey, maybe this is not right. I can flag it if I want. I can add to safe senders. But if I come over here to security options, I can say that, you know, hey, I'm going to mark this as phishing. So it says, thank you for reporting. Reporting phishing scams help keep your information and others' information safe. We're going to report. So and you'll see on here that that has been essentially moved to my deleted items. What happened there? Well, let's come over here to the simulation training. So here's the simulation that we just did. One of 3 users compromised. We have successfully 3 emails. We have one of them that was clicked, one that supplied their credentials, and you'll see here eventually the one that I just submitted as phishing here will also come in here too. So we can get an idea of the different scenarios that these things are coming in for. Now this was just a very simple one. I literally with 2 clicks of a button we did this. You know, that's easy. Maybe we want to get more sophisticated, but we certainly can, of course. Come over here to simulations and launch a simulation. Here's all the different ones we want to do. Here's a malware attachment, links and attachment, links to malware. We can see all of these. This is a big popular one that we're seeing on here, this OAuth consent grant. So when people are doing OAuth enterprise apps and such, we're seeing these on here. Well, we got to be careful with them. So these are great ways to be able to do it. Call the simulation. I'm just going to call it whatever I want here. I'm not going to complete it, but just to show you. Create a payload. A lot of different things that we can do on here. This is the payload name, the way it looks for Outlook contact access. So this is the way the email looks. Hey, your Outlook email account has been upgraded to the new OWA Web Access. So Outlook Web Access Server. Yeah, it's a little bit weird on there to make sure your account has access the contacts. This is a big deal. People are very adamant about the contacts. You got to do it. And we're also instructing them to do it fast. 24 hours from the receipt of this email. Cordially, the help desk team. So again, looking at these, these are a little strange, aren't they? This particular one here does not have an attachment. And then that's it. We have also this update your account one. Hey, this looks pretty good here, actually. You know what happens here? Looks good. We may have again another OAuth consent attack. There's no attachment on this particular one here, but no simulations, of course, yet. But this is the way it looks here. Oh, those look interesting. So this is mail from, and you can see service at mail-sec.com, which is whatever that is. So we can also, create another payload. So we want to do, I don't know, an email. And then kind of trickle these here in between. I'm just going to go ahead and cancel these for the time being because we're going to keep these payloads. Next. What users? We can actually create OAuth apps too. We'll just call this whatever. We're not going to put a logo on it, but we can actually configure what this OAuth app looks like. So which is pretty cool. So we're going to, it's going to read your mail. Well, actually, no, we're going to read your contacts because that makes sense of the one that we were looking at. And we can put a logo on it, of course, or whatever. So we can have specific users or everybody. This is not a good idea to just blast everybody, of course, at once. We want to kind of trickle this in or do specific groups of people at a time. And then what will end up happening is that we'll have specific, so if we come over here, over time, we're going to have users who have not been targeted in the past 3 months or repeat offenders. So if Getty continuously clicks on those, as we saw on there, he's going to be a repeat offender. So we want to continuously, maybe always automate those. We can do priority accounts or different tags or groups of people, whatever we want to do. I'm just going to choose all just to make it easy. Preferences, we could do the Microsoft chaining experience, which is the easiest one, or we can redirect them over to our own personal ones if we want to do that too. Or we can assign the training for me. So Microsoft's going to say, based off of the OAuth one, there's some training around it. we can set for days after simulation. 30 days is the default. We can put it to whatever we want, of course. So we're going to use the default Microsoft landing page. We can create our own if we want. We have the templates that are on here, which are pretty cool because here's the preview panel. Whenever this loads up here, I'll show you exactly what it's going to look like when a user clicks on it. Oh, you were just fish. So that other one that we saw that was kind of janky here, this one here is actually pretty nice. It's okay, you're human. Let's learn from this. And then tips to identify the message. So we see different things on there, go to calendar and such. So the one that we saw there was a little bit janky, but that's okay because that was just kind of the one-click simulation there. But this one here we can be a little bit more advanced on. We can put our logo on it, our own branding, our own customer branding, so users can understand that this is a real thing. Looks good to me. End user notification, we can do the default one, which is the Microsoft one, which I think is just fine. I have my personal opinion here. So we can do this positive reinforcement notification panel here, which here's a review notification. Let's look at this. Thank you for reporting a fish. So if I did report it as fish, I would have gotten this. Congratulations on successfully spotting and reporting it. Great. Or we can come down here. Here's the training item. You've been fished. Here you go. I can customize these however I want. And then same thing here. Said, hey, you've also been. For this particular one here, there's going to be true trainings around to it. And we can do lots of different things there if we want. Select a default language. I did select it. English. Oh, duh. We'll deliver us during the campaign and twice a week. We'll be insistent about it. Launch the simulation as soon as I'm done. I could schedule it for a different date, different times, a number of days you want the simulation to end. So you can do it for a period of time or whatever. In this instance here, we'll just launch it as soon as I'm done. Review it, and then we'll essentially go out there and be able to check it all out. Everything looks cool. We can save and close it, come back to it, or we can do a test just so we can get the experience of what it's like for ourselves. All cool stuff there. Now, we can also set up automations here. Now, I'm not going to go too far into detail here, but we can create automations of, hey, we want to do phishing attack credential harvests. We want to do this randomized payloads. We're going to target specific users or everybody in the organization. We're going to assign it automatically. These are really helpful here. So we can just kind of set these up on here. We have the same experience. All this stuff looks wonderful. We're going to use the default stuff as we said on here. But here's where we... Come on. Actually, you know what? We're not going to worry about this here. Yeah, that's fine. So we want to do it randomized. It's going to be just a random schedule within the period of time that we create. We can set this here is that here's the scope. It can be on any of these days. We're going to be randomized completely inside of here. We're going to randomize the send time so people get it differently. So if somebody gets the email that they can't be like, hey, did you just get this email? And somebody's like, no, I didn't get it yet because it hasn't come to them yet. So we could pick whatever we want. And I always recommend random as much as possible. We'll do whatever, 2 simulations. Looks good. Mondays. And then we can target all selected users in it run. We can target repeat offenders. So these people that are bad, we want to target them a couple times, like 3 times in this simulation period of time. That's fine. We can do that too. But these are all automated pieces here. So we can set this up automatically. Really cool stuff. So at a very high level, that should be about it. We have the repeat offender threshold in here too, which we can do. As 2 is default, so. Content library, this is just all of the stuff that's available here. So we can manually create payloads or anything like that. So really cool stuff. This American Express one here, I think, is the best. Because it looks like American Express. It's got all of it. It's got the little don't live life without it. And you got all of these things on here. But you got some minor inconsistencies in it. But this one actually here is one of the best. And you can see the compromise rate. This is what Microsoft says across the board. It's this American Express one is the best. So I use that one quite a lot. So all cool stuff, like I said. I love these. These are great ways of being able to keep your users on track and safe so you can train them. It's much better for them to fall for these rather than to fall for somebody else. We don't want that to happen. So with that being said, that about closes up the loop here on Defender for Office 365. There's a lot we can do on here. I wanted to do more simulations, but unfortunately, it's just not in the cards here. This is just the beginner boot camp here. I am going to have a more advanced class around these here, so we can actually do a lot more of the simulations and actually bring in Mailflow, but that requires a more advanced lab and a lot more from you. But like I said, this is just a beginner boot camp here. I don't like to go above a level 300. With all that being said here, that pretty much covers everything for the Defender for Endpoint, or excuse me, Defender for Office 365 piece. So thank you for jumping on this lab here. I know this has been a long one here, but again, thank you. And we will see you over on the last lecture of this section here is going to be around hybrid exchange. Thank you for jumping on and see you on the next one.